You know how you start a painting with an idea in mind, and then it turns into a wrestling match of struggles? Well, I love the end result of this dolphin pour, but it was definitely an uphill battle getting there. But good things can come from learning through mistakes. One problem I encountered was my swipe color sort of blended into a very average monotone type swipe. I was using the same consistencies I always use for my swipes, and I get really good results. But this really just didn't have as much contrast as I usually get. So I tried again, and still not a lot of contrast. But then it struck me. I was swiping the opposite direction of my color lines. This time my base color lines would be in the same direction as my swipe direction. And it turned out much better, and that was what I was going for. So I really wanted my dolphin to have a lot of cells and that really good contrast. So that was my first problem I worked through. Then I went to make my stencil and I realized I was out of contact paper. And I'm too lazy to run to the store right now, so I decided to use cling wrap and painter's masking tape. But first I wanted to visualize my dolphin. I couldn't tell how big I wanted to make it on this 11 by 14 inch canvas, how big I wanted my water to be. So I just took a picture of my pour and I put it into Photoshop. Then I drew out a dolphin to see what it would look like on a sunset background. And I knew I wanted water in it this time, but did I want water runoff from the tail? Yes or no? I went with yes. So I printed off my silhouette. I'm going to use cling wrap as the tracing paper, and hindsight, it would have been so much quicker to freehand my dolphin straight onto the masking tape. But I learned through trial and error. So I traced my Photoshop drawing onto the cling wrap, then taped my cling wrap onto my masking tape sheet. Then I cut out the shape with the scissors and took the cling wrap off. All of it was very clunky, hard to do. It wanted to stick to everything. Then I had to use an X-Acto knife to cut out the little splash pieces, which, spoiler alert, didn't end up working anyways. I just ended up painting this part on. In the end, my advice, just freehand the dolphin shape and water onto the masking tape if you can. And skip cutting out the splash part. I'll explain why in a second. Also, contact paper is so much easier than working with masking tape, but masking tape will get the job done if that's all you have. So now to put it on the canvas. Make sure to clean your canvas of silicone oil so you don't have any problems with your paint. Okay, so the tape isn't wanting to stick, so I'm just going to start applying the Mod Podge. So I use Mod Podge as a seal around the border of the tape so paint won't leak under. And in this case, the Mod Podge is kind of gluing down parts of the border that weren't sticking. And this part is very tedious. I do 3 layers of Mod Podge to make sure there aren't any gaps between the tape and the canvas. But it's really important to get a really good seal on here, so it's worth the effort. And now the Mod Podge is dried. So I'm applying the background sunset, and this problem area was just me. I was pretty lazy here and using one brush without washing it between the different colors I used, and that's a great way to get muddy colors, so I finally get a different brush to help out. Then I wait for it to dry. It's really important to let the paint dry all the way because otherwise it'll stretch and tear up places. It's hard to wait, probably my least favorite part. Okay, now to take the tape off, so I peel it up. So what happened to the splash area is that I went over the whole thing with Mod Podge because there were so many little seams. But what that means is the paint was stuck only to the Mod Podge, not to the canvas, and the pieces were too tiny to cut cleanly and to adhere. So I'm just going to paint this part on. But I do use the X-Acto knife along the seam very carefully if there are any areas that are pulling up around the main shapes. This just helps break that seal of dried paint in Mod Podge. Okay, so I paint on the orange acrylic to create that water runoff effect, and here we go. So all in all, I like it. I'm not sure which one I like more. I like features of each. I definitely like the addition of the water at the bottom, but I really did like the water runoff effect along the back from the first one that I did. And it might be a disaster, but I'm going to try that same silicone oil and swipe trick that I did from the first dolphin pour. And here's another hindsight thing. If you're going to try this, I would recommend leaving your stencil on and let the background dry, and then do the silicone oil and swipe trick before you take off the stencil. I'm going to try it anyways just to show you what it'll end up looking like. This is my first time doing this. And if you decide after the fact to reapply the stencil to do this trick, make sure to seal it again with Mod Podge and let it dry. I didn't because I was impatient and it brought up new problems. So I love the effect, but because I didn't seal it well and I was impatient and I pulled it up before it dried, the oil and some of the paint seeped under my background acrylic, and it definitely gave it these creases when moisture gets underneath acrylic and kind of is basically like soaking it off. So patience would fix this problem. Another subtle thing I didn't think about is that my water runoff colors don't match with the lines of the Dolphin, like the light and dark areas. I use the exact same, I use the leftover pour paints, but you see how it's kind of linear with these light and darks in the Dolphins? Well, my water runoff doesn't match that. It's just a subtle thing, but there is a clear break in the transition between Dolphin and the water runoff. And in the future, I'm pretty sure I could try to mimic it better if I had a picture of what I was looking for. Oh, anyways, what are y'all's thoughts? I think between the two, I like the water at the bottom. And I like the lighter color at the front and top of the Dolphin on the first one. It helps define the shape of the Dolphin. It adds that distinction to the nose bridge area too. And that's something you can add on after everything's dried. You can just use your same lighter color paint and follow some of those cell lines using that toothpick, just like I did in the first Dolphin video that I did. So anyways, there you have it. Thanks guys for watching.